What's good, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the TREUISH Hoops podcast. James Boisits is here again, and we're going to recap the NBA Finals. Boston Celtics beat the Dallas Mavericks in 5 games and win the franchise's 18th championship, which breaks a tie they had with the Lakers. One of us here had a correct prediction, the other one didn't. I want to say first before we get into what went wrong with Dallas, basically, and just everything about the series. Uh, I think Dallas, this run cannot be overstated. Like, this was an incredible run for them, given what people thought Dallas was going to be coming into the season, what they were halfway through the season, and just the changes they were able to make, and just kind of the path that they went to beating the teams that they did. Uh, it's kind of crazy. There's been a lot of conversations about Dallas, Luka, Kyrie, and, you know, Dallas, we can't forget, it is tough to make the NBA finals. And they ran into a team that just proved to be the juggernaut that all the numbers said that they were.
I'm upset at myself.
Okay.
I have been against Dallas this entire year. And I think a big reason why I gave them, the benefit of the doubt here is because I just didn't like how Boston was playing in the playoffs. It's crazy. We're going to look back in history as like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
82 and 20 or something they went during this year. Incredible. And then you look at it and it's like they played a Miami Heat team that wasn't the Miami Heat. They played a Cleveland Cavalier team that didn't have their best player, and they didn't have a Pacer team. They went against a Pacer team that didn't have their best player. They didn't face a New York Knicks team that was really fully healthy, right? I think that Knicks team could have given them some trouble. And then they play Dallas, who's perfectly healthy and fine. I guess Luka fine, but Luka's playing in the game, whatever. They would have beat him with a healthy Luka. I mean, I guess I underestimated the Porzingis thing, but Porzingis wasn't in a lot of this series. Like they just were playing better, and I knew better. And I saw who Dallas played. The Dallas Minnesota thing really screwed me because I was like, Kyrie's gonna be bad in that series. There's too much length and size. They're gonna like Luka. I think will be fine. Everything else will be fine, but they need Kyrie to be good in that series if they want to win. Minnesota just beat Denver, so I'm like, okay, the length of Minnesota. Here we go. And they absolutely destroyed Minnesota. So I'm like, oh my God, like, I would have had Minnesota possibly beating Boston. I got to go with Dallas here. And it was just stupid. It's weird. It's weird how it all unfolded. But I should have known better, man. Kyrie can't play well in Boston. He hasn't done it for years. And we're going to get into another conversation about Kyrie and Dallas later on because I don't think it's a foregone conclusion they return, even with Luka. Because how does this team get better? We'll get to that later. But I want to start with Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have your thoughts on Boston?
Yeah, I mean, when the Western Conference playoffs, I think it played with a lot of people. It wasn't just you because we see Denver go down. Once Denver went down, in my mind, I was like, all right, this is open for Boston. The lane is there. This is their championship to lose. But then you got Minnesota beating Denver, and everyone's like, "Oh, Minnesota!" Everyone's high on Minnesota, and then they go into Dallas, and Dallas kills them in 5 games. And then I was like, "All right, now Dallas, like this is crazy, best offensive backcourt in history." Everyone's losing their minds,
No.
and Boston goes in and rolls them. It was lying in plain sight the entire season. It was kind of hidden by how bad the Eastern Conference was for the most part this season, and the fact that the Eastern Conference playoffs, outside of the Philly Knicks series, was kind of a joke. But they won 64 games, all these numbers throughout the season, their win differential, their net rating, their record, everything said that they were a really great team that was dominant. But because we had these doubts of Joe Mazzulla, is he a coach that can get it done? Jayson Tatum, is he someone who could be the best player on a championship team? It caused us to really doubt this Boston Celtics team up until the end. And now everyone that picked Dallas to win, or everyone who's had doubts about Boston, which has been a lot of people, and there's still some people that, doubt whether this is a legitimate run, talking about their path. Can they do this again in the future?
Yeah, screw those guys. I hate that. I
Like,
hate that shit. I hate it. They won
like
the championship. Shut up.
exactly.
That's loser talk. I hate it. And as much as I like get annoyed that and I firmly believe that like, I've been in that situation where like I thought my team was better than the NBA champion. It doesn't matter. It didn't happen. They had a chance to run it back and beat them, and they didn't. The Bucks won the 2021 championship. That's how it's going to be remembered. The Boston Celtics are going to have won the NBA championship. Shut up. They can only play who's in front of them.
I mean, the championship, you could do that to like almost every NBA champion in history. Like,
Shut
oh,
up. I don't
this
want to hear
person
it.
was hurt, this, and that. They didn't have to play this team. Like, that's just dumb. Like,
It's
it's
not.
not Boston's fault what happened to the Eastern Conference and the fact they didn't have to play Denver. Would it have been nice to see them play Denver? I thought that would have been a great series. Even Minnesota would have been an interesting series. And we thought Dallas would put up a better fight. It just Boston was a lot better. Defensively, they came in and just basically shut down Dallas's offense, which was shocking
Mhm.
that this offensive backcourt and this team, the way they were playing coming into the series, that basically everyone, except for maybe PJ Washington to an extent, was kind of just null and void. And that's credit to the Celtics and Joe Mazzulla. They came in with a defensive game plan. Derek White and Drew Holiday both together said, we're going to stop Kyrie and force him to have one of his worst playoff performances in recent memory.
Yeah.
Luka was numbers wise was really good and did I think everything he could. I don't think we should be blaming Luka for this playoff series, but there's definitely things from this series that he can learn from and get better from that he should have done better.
Thoughts on Brown versus Tatum? This stupid conversation of who's the best player on the team. Player on the team, I think personally, is Jayson Tatum, but it doesn't matter because they're both really good. So can we just like stop it with this who's better thing? I believe Tatum is better than him. I understand he was terrible in the first two games of the series. I understand Jaylen Brown played better than him probably in the playoffs, won the conference finals MVP. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But let's not undermine it here. I think it's a silly argument. They won the championship. It doesn't matter. There's been all this narrative that they should break them up. They don't complement each other well. Well, they won the championship. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it shows people before, I'll let you speak on this. Do you remember a couple years ago when they got killed by the Nets in the first round? People were talking about breaking them up. These guys were so young.
I was like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not gonna work. I was like, it's not gonna
Listen,
work.
man, we got to be careful with this stuff. Minnesota. We were like, Minnesota. We should panic after this 1 year, or we should just break up everything. Let stuff play out, man, until
Mm-hmm.
you can't possibly let it play out anymore. These guys were so young that you have to let it. You have to try and make it work. It's why, in a way, I'm hesitant with Atlanta and Trae Young. It doesn't feel nice when I say get rid of Trae Young. But even though I think they should, it's weird, but it doesn't feel right when I say that because the guy is young. Sometimes you need guys but sometimes a change of scenery is what's needed. The Jaylen Brown Tatum thing, asking them to break that up too soon, always seemed a little ridiculous to me.
Yeah. Um, I think people just question their play style, whether it could work and mesh together. But obviously they were so young, and that was just kind of a consequence of them having so much success early that seeing them come up short when people thought they had good enough teams to get to the finals, even though they were so young, all those conference championship appearances, people thought, got to break it up. And thankfully, Boston stayed the course. They made a huge change in the offseason. Marcus Smart, who had been there like 9 years, a cornerstone piece of that rebuild post that Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce trade, which I know you're very familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they traded someone that had been on the team and part of teams for years and years that had embedded themselves in the Boston culture, and they got Porzingis, got Drew Holiday, and what seems like a steal of a trade now, and they stayed and they kept the core together. And Tatum and Brown have both grown as players so much from their first uh, conference finals appearance with that way back when they played LeBron. They took LeBron to 7 games with Tatum as a rookie. So it
Mm-hmm.
was clear that these two together can be successful. You just needed the right pieces around them to make it work. And this team, 1 through 6, 1 through 7, is just complete. They know their roles. They complement each other so well, and you could see it, in these games. You didn't know who was going to kill you. Drew Holiday in game 2 goes off for like 25 or 26, whatever it was. Porzingis in the first game was on fire in that first half. Derek White in these playoffs has gone off for 30. Any of these guys can kill you. even though we know Tatum is the best player, and Brown, I agree with you in this playoffs, I think was better overall.
Mm-hmm.
Tatum still really struggled shooting in the finals, but he did about everything else fantastic. Facilitating defensively, rebounding. He did everything you would need him to do other than just shoot the ball well.
Let's shift over to Dallas because I think we've said everything we need to say about Boston. They're great. Um, but what are your thoughts on Luka? Because Luka's getting a lot of criticism in this series.
Yeah, right. It's focused on the defense, right? The media spent a lot of time, Brian Windhorst famously, had that rant after I think it
Mm-hmm.
was game 2 or game 3. Um, it's the first time I've ever seen someone's blow by percentage on TV. I'm not gonna excuse Luka for his defense. Obviously, I think his defensive effort definitely needs to change. It's something we've known about him
Mm-hmm.
for years now.
Yeah.
But when you reach this stage in the NBA, the NBA Finals, everything matters, and that killed them a lot. I think
Mm-hmm.
in this series. Um, you got to keep in mind that he has been injured for most of the time. His knee's always bleeding. I don't know what it is from. He's getting injections and stuff before the game. That definitely, I think, played a factor. But he's gonna have to realize that to be a champion, to be that type of player, we crucified Jokic for this too, and Jokic has improved as a defender. He's not Gobert necessarily, but he
You
is
don't have to
not.
be.
No, he's not a liability. Luka just has to not be a liability, and I think in this series,
I agree.
at times he was a liability, especially if he's switched out on the Jaylen Brown or a Tatum or even Drew Holiday or someone like that.
Mm-hmm.
So he has to be better.
Yeah.
Fouling out in game 3, that just can't happen.
Can't
Your,
happen.
your team is storming back. Your team needs you. You're the offensive engine. You cannot foul out in that situation. Um, it sucks because Luka's only 25, and we know he's possibly a generational player. He's a top 3 player in the NBA. I thought he could have won the MVP this year, but he's not the reason his team lost. I think there were a lot of reasons this team lost, and a lot of them had to do with offense, Kyrie Irving being horrendous. But the Mavs, they held the Celtics to under 108 points a game. The Celtics had not done that, uh, scored under 108 in 5 straight games, all playoffs. The
Mm-hmm.
Mavs did that. So
Yeah.
despite Luka's defensive problems, he didn't hurt the team as much as people made it seem like. It was mostly offense. And I think Luka, he didn't shoot great. But the numbers were great. When you're trusted to be the entire offensive engine of your team, we talked about this during the regular season, why we didn't like Dallas, because they have so much riding on Luka. He has to be fantastic in any situation for them to win. And he was good, but he wasn't great. And he needed to be great, as did Kyrie. And I know we'll probably get to Kyrie in a second. Um,
Oh,
but
believe me, we will.
I think Luka's gonna learn from this. He's only 25. There's things about his game that he may have to change. I know people are saying he should be playing off ball. I mean, Dallas is gonna
No,
probably need
it's
another
not. It's
play.
never gonna happen. Enough
It's
with the
no,
off ball thing. It's like LeBron. He's
it's.
not gonna be off ball. As many as like, oh, he can play off the ball. No, no, no. And you
I
know
mean,
what? It's better that he's not. Sometimes they're just better with him. They just have the ball. That he just has the ball. It's just better. I mean, everyone's better. Listen. Let's make no mistake about this. The Dallas Mavericks being in the finals. I don't think anybody had that. I don't think anybody had that. So
no.
why are they there? It's because of him. Why did they destroy Minnesota? Him. Right? Kyrie averaged 16 points a game in the Thunder series. So they didn't win because of Kyrie. And a one seed Thunder team that was very talented. Okay. Luka got by them. Okay. Luka might, as these rumors circle, he might have ended the Clippers. So, he faced some good teams and, they're there because of him. The defense, 100%. I'm sure some of it was a health thing, because there were times where and I'm sure Boston knew that. They're like, I don't think Luka's healthy. I think we're just going to go at him every single time. Big reason why he fouled out. I just think we do this with stars. We did this with Tatum. We did this with Giannis in the conference finals. Like we do these things with stars. We did this with LeBron. They get to the finals, they most likely disappoint, We expect them to get better quickly. We expect them to immediately win a championship sometimes, and that's just not how it works. So but I also think criticism is a part of how they get there, So when Tatum's upset that people said some stuff about him, I'm assuming it drove him to be better. Let's be real. He was bad in the 22 finals. Now, when people say you can never win with him, I think that's pushing it. But he was bad in the 22 finals. And he was bad for a lot of this finals until the end. He won. He got over the hump. And you know what? He'll probably be better after that. Luka, this is his first NBA finals. He's been in the conference finals twice in his career at a young age. It's really impressive what he's done. Okay. But then there's also moments like last year. Like Dallas should not have missed the play-in. They shouldn't have missed. I don't care. They shouldn't have missed the play-in. I understand injuries.
They wanted that draft pick.
Yeah, exactly. They wanted that draft pick. But the roster itself, while I think it's impressive what Dallas has done, it's not like blowing people away here.
No.
They were overmatched versus Boston, and it's fools like me. And you know what? I should have known not to pick them when I saw a lot of people picking them. Because I thought, like, you know what? Dallas could shock some people. But then I saw way too many people picking Dallas. And then I was like, yeah, Boston might be the champion here.
It was a little surprising for so many people to pick Dallas.
I just think people don't like Tatum.
I
really do.
possible,
I
very
think people find him like corny,
especially the reaction to his celebrations and his interviews and stuff after the championship. Everyone was kind of no one wanted to see him win. I feel like, which sucks. I don't know.
Even my brother, like when he's crying, he's like, he's not crying. That's fake. I'm like, dude, it's hard to win a championship. It's hard. I'm sure he's emotional. It's like, that doesn't even matter. They won the title. Good for them. Should we talk about Kyrie?
Yeah, we should talk about Kyrie.
All right. Can I start because I chose Dallas?
I know you. And Kyrie is, near and dear to your heart.
I don't want to hear anything about him being too harsh on him because it seems like every time I rely on this guy, he disappoints me. I should have known better, man. This guy can't play in Boston. He can't. I think we have overrated him. Or he's properly rated, we should say. We do this thing with Kyrie where, like, he's done so much ridiculous stuff. And there's so much basketball evidence to prove that he kind of isn't always great. But then, like, he's the most skilled player ever. Like, the players see what he does and they're so amazed by what he does. And I'm amazed at what he does. But the reality is, it's like, he doesn't affect winning in the way that we think he does. He averaged 16 points per game versus the Thunder, man. It's like, well, it's not all stats. It's like, you're right. It isn't all stats. But what else are you bringing to the table if you're not scoring? Like, he's not defending. He's not a great playmaker, passer type person. I mean, and if you disagree with me, LeBron James literally said, we need a playmaker, and Kyrie was on that team. So don't give me it. Yeah. I just think we do this thing with Kyrie where, like, we think we're being so harsh on him. Like, Stephen A gets a lot of hate for hating on him. I can speak from experience. Kyrie deserved every second of criticism he has received. He also receives all the praise that he receives, right? He deserves it. Mm-hmm. But he was brutal in these finals. And excusing him, if you're the most skilled player to ever live, I don't know, man. Play a little better in Boston.
Yeah, I agree fully. Kyrie was horrendous in this series. To win this series, Luka and Kyrie both had to be sensational. And I thought Luka, for the most part, held up his end. Kyrie obviously did not. And, he wasn't great, like we mentioned, for the majority of the playoffs, really. He was up and down against the Clippers. The overall numbers look good. And then OKC, he really struggled. People were wondering what's wrong with Kyrie. And then Minnesota, he was great. And that's why everyone started coming around. Everyone started talking about, the media was like, Kyrie's having this playoff renaissance. But no, this playoff run was more or less the same it's been the last couple years since he's left Cleveland. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, because of this season, I think they more so want Kyrie to have changed. Because everyone loves Kyrie the player,
Mm-hmm.
but when he's doing the stuff that he was doing in Brooklyn, it's hard to root for the guy. But then you have these performances where he just kind of isn't good enough, and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
man, why isn't he doing this? Why isn't he good enough?
Mm-hmm.
Especially because we've seen him be great on this stage alongside LeBron. We saw him help LeBron win a title against one of the greatest teams ever assembled.
Mm-hmm. I think
But
people, yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to.
I was gonna say, but ever since then, his playoff numbers aren't great. And then in these finals, 20 points per game, 3 rebounds, 5 assists on 41% shooting is not gonna get it done.
It's amazing what one shot can do for your career.
I mean, it was those
It
whole
was an
3 games.
amazing shot,
It
incredible
was,
shot,
yeah.
but this whole idea that he's this incredibly clutch playoff guy is a little overblown because of that shot. And he was great. He was great. Just thoughts on Dallas. I don't know if Dallas gets back here, even with Luka being as because first of all, like Luka would have to be he's definitely capable of it, but he would have to be transcendent to the highest degree because the Western Conference is going to get better and really good. And the reality is I think a big reason why Minnesota, just looking back at it, I just think Minnesota might have just been exhausted from the Denver series. I expect Ant to get better, and I don't know how Dallas gets better. This whole run that they've made has kind of hid the fact that, like, wait. How do they get better? Seems like they've pushed all their chips on this duo and this team. And how do you get better from this? PJ Washington's young enough. Maybe he gets better. You hope Lively was a rookie. You hope he could be like a Tyson Chandler type piece.
Mhm.
They have some nice younger players and stuff, but I don't know, man. Like they're kind of like this is kind of their group.
With the way just the NBA has been, there's definitely no guarantee you get back. I mean, Miami and Boston have been the only two teams to go to 2 finals in the past what would it be 5, 6 seasons. So yeah, Dallas as constructed, I think you gotta hope. They have some of these young guys, Josh Green, Jaden Hardy, Lively, as you mentioned, who had a great playoff run for a rookie. I mean, for a rookie to be this impactful uh, for a team going to the finals was crazy. Um, you gotta hope, I guess, some of those guys get better. But you look at this and like in these finals, especially offensively, they struggled. Everyone outside of Luka, basically. PJ Washington was good. A lot of credit goes to the Celtics. Obviously, they eliminated some things. They completely took away the Lively and Gafford lobs that killed Minnesota. But Tim Hardaway Jr. who's a streaky player, was 14 points per game in the regular season. He didn't see a lot of time in these playoffs. And finally, when he did see some time in the finals, he was not good. Max Kleber, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He had a shoulder injury. I think he wasn't ready to come back, but he played anyway. you know, Derek Jones Jr., some of these guys who they've relied upon in this playoff series, are they guys that are going to rise to that moment if you're trying to get back to the NBA Finals? Because, like you mentioned, the West is crazy. I mean, the Clippers right now are kind of in limbo. We don't know what the Clippers will look like next season. But Denver, I agree, should probably be better. And, you have the best player in the league. You're always going to be a contender. You have Minnesota. You're going to have Oklahoma City. We'll see what they do in the offseason. You got Memphis is going to be back with a healthy Ja Moran and, a healthy core. There's a lot of teams in the Western Conference. The Kings, who knows? We'll see what the Lakers end up being. There's a lot of teams, the Warriors, there's a lot of teams in the West that are going to be vying for playoff spots and stuff like that. There's no guarantee that you can get back even into the playoffs. One bad injury for a stretch can kill you in the standings and you don't recover. Like we've seen that happen with teams. So going forward, the Dallas may have to find some way. They don't have their draft pick this year, and their first round pick. It goes to the Knicks. We'll see what they don't have much assets because they kind of pushed all their chips in for Kyrie and for the core that they have. They made the moves necessary at the deadline. Is there something else they can do, or do they maybe look next season, see how this team is, and maybe they try to get someone in the buyout market at the deadline again, because they're not going to be in play for any of these stars that are going to be available, Ingram or Garland or Mitchell, because they don't have those type of assets to make that type of move.
No.
So you got to hope that Luka continues to get better, that he remains the all-time player that he looks like he's on the trajectory of being, and that Kyrie is also just as good as he was this year.
And listen, this this front office has proven to be very creative. I didn't think there was ways to get better last year.
Yeah.
And they did. They nailed the draft picks and they nailed like free agent signings like Dante Exum, who was
Brought him back
completely out
into
of
the
left field.
NBA. Yeah, brought him back
I mean,
into the
this Dante Exum plays like that dude who's like 40 in a pickup game with a bunch of 20-year-olds. That's what he plays like, but he's effective.
Yeah.
And even though like I looked up Dante Exum's age, he's 28. It feels like he's been in the NBA for he has for a decade. And you're like, oh, he's 28 years old. That's crazy. Anyway, I just think like we don't feel this way about Boston. We don't feel this way about the Thunder or Denver, where, we feel like they're going to be in the hunt every year. There is no scenario that would shock me for Dallas next year. None.
Right.
Not one. It would shock me if they missed the playoffs. That's what
Yeah.
I'll be.
That
That would be shocking. Would it shock you if they're a 7 seed next year or an 8 seed?
No.
Would it shock you if they're back in the finals next year?
Maybe like a little bit, but
It wouldn't shock me just because I've seen it.
Right.
Like now I've seen it. They're in the finals. No, wouldn't shock me if they won it. Depending on the team that they played. Nothing would shock me with this team. Nothing. I guess the thing is too is just like, we say they don't have a lot of draft picks, but they have players that other teams would want now, I think. Last year they didn't. Like now with PJ Washington, with Gafford, you'd ideally like to keep those guys, but let's just say like this team's flat, not having anything next year. Other teams would want those dudes. A Lively, anything like, let's say Lively doesn't take the step next year that they expect, which is very common for sophomore slumps, right? Other teams would value that. And maybe they can get assets for those guys and then flip those. Like we've seen this front office be creative. They could find free agents on the minimum that maybe could help them and all that, right? I just think we shouldn't guarantee them next. Like, I don't know. They're definitely not going to be my favorite coming out of the Western Conference next year. Like, I still like Minnesota better than their team, which is crazy, but I still like Denver. And I know the Dallas fan is probably like, what the hell? Like, we beat those guys. I get it. But, sometimes you capture lightning in a bottle, especially when you have major explosive offensive talent like them. I just want to quickly just rattle off a few questions. I don't want to go too long on this because the NBA offseason is coming up. Just a couple of questions here. Is the Lakers coach going to be JJ Redick?
I think it is.
Yeah. Or does Monty Williams,
Nah, I don't think Monty Williams fits whatever they're trying to do. I think
what does Monty Williams fit at this point? Because that was a disaster in Detroit.
I mean, the dude they gave him all his money. He got Cade back from injury, and they won less games than they did the year before. I don't know how he does that. But the Lakers, the Dan Hurley thing was crazy, and just it showed.
I still think they dropped the ball. They should have paid Dan Hurley.
100%, they should have. If he was serious about actually leaving UConn, which I think he was.
I think he was serious, and I think this idea that he wasn't are just UConn people.
No.
And people keep talking about his wife, and I'm like, if his wife wasn't okay with getting paid $100 million over 7 years, then divorce her, because that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think
you're with the wrong person at that point.
I think they just came with, this was the money we're offering, and we're not going to go higher. That's kind of just what the Lakers have been doing recently. They did the same thing to Ty Lue.
And to me, Hurley would have been perfect to end the LeBron era and transition yourself into the youth era of development. I think they dropped the ball. Now, listen, they could go after him next year. I think he'll be available next year still. All right, next. Is Trae Young an Atlanta Hawk this summer, after the summer?
No.
What team does he go to?
That's another question. That's the question.
I think Miami.
I could see him. Yeah. I think Brooklyn would be in if they
I
don't
don't
get
think it's
Mitchell.
Brooklyn. I'd be shocked, but I don't know what Brooklyn. Because it seems like Mitchell. I don't know what to believe from Cleveland.
That's
All
true.
these stories contradict.
Everything has been said about what's coming out of Cleveland. Like,
Nothing will shock me what happens with Cleveland.
right.
It seems like Mitchell's going to extend. Like, what the hell is this? And then I don't know. Maybe he's. But then Udonis Haslam just said, I don't think Mitchell wants to be in Cleveland. Like, where's he getting that from?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know what's going on over there, but
But yeah, Trey Young, I don't think I think they're gonna what they do with the first pick, I don't know. But I think they're gonna move Trey Young. I don't necessarily agree that they should. I think you traded Luka on draft night for Trey Young. I think you ride it out until you know it can't work with I think if you put a better supporting cast, it could work with Trey Young. I think he's a
yeah.
great player with his flaws. I think DeJounte Murray's good too, but he's not. I don't think he's
I think
Trey
I would
Young.
lean. I think I would keep him now. I think I would keep Trey and trade Murray and just try
Yeah,
to do that. But because you're
that's what I
not
would do.
going to rebuild if you're trading Trey. This number one pick is not, and if you're choosing Murray, if you're trading Trey, you should just get rid of everybody.
Yeah,
I think.
I think so. Might as well.
Yeah. If Trayon leaves, I think he goes to Miami. That's my thing.
That'd be
Where does
interesting.
Paul George end up? I think it's
Mm,
Philly.
that Joel Embiid and Paul George when they were on the
I think it's Philly, man.
when they were on the shows on ESPN. I think that I'm sure they've talked about it. People were commenting tampering, but players can't tamper, even though it definitely happens around the league. I think he goes to Philly. I don't. I mean, there is a world where, for some reason, Steve Ballmer says, "You know what? We're moving to a new arena. We need stars. We have Kawhi already. Might as well keep it going." And brings Paul George back. He puts the money because Paul George wants money. There's a world where I think the Clippers do that if they see no other avenue and they don't want to be bad next year. But Philly, they have this spot open. They want to win now. They see it there. Boston is really their only competition. Boston and New York. Um, get Paul George. You get a player who obviously a 20, 25 point per game scorer. You put him alongside Tyrese Maxey and Embiid. It just makes too much sense. I think they do it.
Yeah. Um, does OG Anunoby return to the Knicks? By the way, do you want Paul George on the Knicks?
No, I do not want Paul George.
Even if you retain OG Anunoby and you're pairing Paul George with Brunson, OG, Randall. Actually, it would have to be a sign and trade, so maybe Randall's
yeah,
a
yeah.
deal.
Yeah, I've
So
seen people have thrown out some trades.
you
Kind of
don't
a
want him.
trade
Okay.
for Randall
I
and
would
stuff.
agree. I wouldn't want him either.
I don't want Paul George. I just think I don't know how many elite years he has left, if
Yeah.
any.
And to
Um,
me, like Julius Randle is just he's too consistent in this regular season, and I
yeah,
think you got a good thing going. So does OG Anunoby return though? What's this story?
I
I think he
saw the.
ultimately does too, but
Yeah, I think he does. I saw the report that he's like not thrilled with the offer. I don't know how much validity
was
there
it
is to that.
35 million a year? I think.
I don't even remember
I think
honestly.
that's what it was.
If it's that, I don't see how he would not want that.
Well,
Um,
he didn't like it. He thinks he's worth more because think about it, man. With the cap coming up, people
true,
are gonna not like when the Nets re-sign Nick Claxton to like 25 million a year. But the reality is, with the cap going up,
right?
it's not gonna look as bad. Um, so Derek White's gonna get 31 million a year annually, and people are gonna be like, "Holy shit, for Derek White."
But I mean, Derek White. I mean,
Derek White's good. Don't get
yeah,
me wrong, but you tell me Derek White is vastly like to me. Derek White and OG Anunoby, they're at the same level, and I would probably take OG Anunoby. So you know that's what OG's saying. He's probably wants 40, something like that.
yeah. I don't know what team around the league is going to give that to him. What was it?
I think OG Anunoby is very valued.
Hmm.
I just think I think the Knicks are going to resign him. I just think if you're the Knicks, like, why would you give up this much if you're not going to bring him back?
Yeah, you're right.
And after how well you guys played with him,
Yeah,
so
I'd worry. I'm worried more about Hartenstein because I know a lot of teams are
yeah, I don't think he
enamored with.
returns.
A lot of teams are enamored with Hartenstein, and I think the money might get to a point where the Knicks are like, we
Yeah,
already got Mitch. We could
yeah.
ride with that. But it would suck to lose him because he was great this season. But OG, I think, returns as a Knick.
I mean, I would try if I was the Knicks to bring him back, obviously, but I just
Yeah.
don't know if they'll go over that number, especially how they're going to pay OG.
Hmm.
Um, what about last one? Is Phoenix dead with Mike Budenholzer?
Are they dead?
Yeah.
Like, are they going to be competitive next year? I mean, I think
Like,
they'll
what do
be.
you expect from Phoenix next year?
I mean, it's more or less the same I saw this year. I think they're going to be good because Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal are good players. He may bring something different to the table, but I just don't think this is a roster that's going to be ultimately successful. And
Yeah.
then, the questions of Kevin Durant, how happy he is there, and, this is how he is everywhere he's been since he left OKC. He doesn't spend a lot of time in one place anymore.
Mm.
And if he feels like if he still wants to win a title, he still feels like he has to prove something. I don't think he does. But if the outside noise feels like he has to, and Phoenix has nowhere to go, despite what Matt Ishbia and James Jones think, like this is a team that's very hard pressed to get better in the future. Um, I think they're going to be more or less the same as they were this season. They're going to win 45 to 50 games. There's going to be stretches of the season where we're like, oh, watch out for Phoenix. And then we're going to get to the playoffs and they're going to fan out just like they did this year.
Well, well, it'll certainly be a fun off season. It's good talking to you, Dan. Really is, right?
Yeah, it's been great. You can check out
It's
James Voice. It's on the JB podcast on Spotify and YouTube. That'll all be in the description. Thanks for listening. See you next time.